in the beginning, Diana began.
Well, thank you, Sharon Lee, for having me on OutRaised Voices. I've been looking forward to this, speaking with you about, my adoption story, but also the wider adoption story. And so you asked me the question about my story and starting from the beginning and where did that start? And that's a complicated question for me to answer because growing up, my story started at 4 months old when I was adopted by the Inch family. And Echo and Richard had two biological sons, my older brothers, Shane and Todd. And this is in the 1960s. And then they had a couple of miscarriages. And after the miscarriages, they knew that they wanted girls. Mom said we didn't want a football team. And so rather than trying again, they decided to just adopt. And they looked at the Children's Home Society and went there in the middle of April in 1967. And I was the only girl. And so they chose me and I think they met me one day and then they came back the next day or the day after and took me home.
Mm-hmm. They met you, and then I guess they had to make a decision, talk about it. Is this, or they just, who knows? Who knows how that works sometimes?
I don't know. At 4 months, I wasn't really,
You didn't know, eh?
but I've got pictures. I've got pictures of them holding me on the um, Children's Home Society steps from when they took me home. Um, and so they adopted me in 67 and then and this is where Sharon Lee, you really do want to invite my sister to come talk to you because it would be fascinating to hear the differences in our stories. So
We'll do that. Absolutely.
my
Thank you.
parents knew that I was mixed race. That was what the Children's Home Society told them. Growing up, I didn't know mixed with what, and people would often ask me the rude question of, "What are you?" Aside from, like I'm a human, they would ask, "Oh, are you Native American? Are you
Mm-hmm.
Pacific Islander?" They would just have questions because I have ambiguous features. And so growing up and into adulthood, I thought of myself as very gray, unknown. But for my sister, who's 13 months younger than I am and not biologically related, she's black and she was adopted a couple of years after I was. So she was 14 months when she was adopted through the Minority Adoption Project, which was a kind of a new pilot project to see if um, children of color could be placed with the white families that were often seeking children, and maybe there weren't any white babies available, so they were open to having just any baby. And our parents were at that time in the 60s considered hippies and didn't see color, and they were just supposedly very loving for um, just wanting a child, to give a child a home or to have a baby, and a girl because they didn't want that football team. So I was raised in this family in the suburbs of Seattle. And my childhood, I mean, it was good. We had dog Bummer and cat Tasha, and we had kittens, and went to school. And our parents, I guess, wanted to give us an experience, kind of a more Black experience. And so for 1 year, the family went to Lochapoka, Alabama, where our parents were in the Vista, the Volunteers in Service to America. My dad had been a carpentry instructor at a community college in Auburn, Washington. And so the family moved to Alabama, and he worked with a Jewish youth group building houses for low income families in Alabama. And our mom helped people figure out what to do with food, their food supply, like Caro syrup and peanut butter and Velveeta cheese, the government issue food. She would try to help
Right.
them figure out what to do with
You mean how to cook or
the
how to stretch it and, all of it.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And just I think she did some other things too. And so that was I think I was maybe 6, and my sister was 5, and her brothers would have been like 9 and 11.
So how was the acceptance out there? Because,
Oh, well, so here we were, a predominantly white family in a Black area out in the country.
right, right.
I think the biggest closest city was also Auburn, Alabama. So we came from Auburn, Washington, or actually we came from Des Moines, Washington to Auburn, Alabama, but lived in the town of Lochapoka. And the Black folks around were like, "What is this white family doing with this Black child, my sister?" And I don't know what they thought I was again there,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because I can kind of pass for whoever's around sometimes. So,
Yes, yes.
but they took my sister and like
Did her
braided her
hair?
hair and did all the things with her hair that our mother never
Didn't
learned
know.
how to take care of Black hair. And
Right, right.
so again, this is where you should talk to my sister. I'll just say that
Well,
the experience was traumatic for her more than the rest of us, and it was good to get back to Washington after a year. But
so
it's
when you're
interesting.
out there, how do you identify to yourself? Now you know you're mixed race. Do you what do you how do you identify with when you're with other people out there? Or do you
Well,
just
I mean,
not
I'm
say anything?
back then. It didn't really come up. Just in the back of my head, like they didn't ask back then. I think in that situation, they just thought I was the child of Echo and
Of
Richard.
your
Yeah,
of the inch. Okay.
yeah,
Because that is the 60s, and there were a lot of questions being asked back then about everything.
yeah. And the one,
So,
a good thing about our parents is they never tried to hide that we were adopted. That would have been, they might have been able to do it with me. It would have been, ridiculous to try to do that with my sister. But there are still parents who are hiding the fact that their child, or now adult children, are adopted. And so I feel very fortunate that that wasn't the case with our own parents. And I think part of that is because they had their own biological children. The stigma of not having your own children didn't apply to them. And so I think they were more open about um, adopting than other people who truly do that as a second or third option to grow their families. And I
well,
think that's often,
Speaking of that, how do your brothers handle the situation? Because I've spoken with other people who grow up with the biological siblings and of the parent, the adoptive parents, and there sometimes is a clash when they're young, maybe when you're younger. So, but is it different? Maybe is it because it's boy and girl, or were they,
Yeah.
they
So what I
protect
was,
you?
thank you. Yeah. And that's a great observation. And in some families, particularly where they have tried to have children and then are unable to, and they adopt and then they get pregnant. I hear more from adopted people who have had conflicts, um, have really been treated as second class citizens in their own families when they were adopted first, and then a biological child is born after, and they become kind of the preferred child. And in our case, again, I think because they did have our brothers first, and they were older and they were boys. Um, and this is where I was doted on. I mean, I was like the their little, I don't know, little doll or something. My brother Shane, I heard this was one of my favorite stories, was that when they got me, he wanted to take me to school for show and tell in a paper sack
All right.
and show me off to his classmates. And
Yes.
that didn't happen, but that always kind of makes me laugh. And this is where they decided to adopt. I was getting too spoiled, I guess. And so they decided to adopt another girl. And so rather than just saying, "Oh, we wanted two boys and two girls," the story that we were handed was that I was getting spoiled, and so we adopted um, our sister, who had a different name, and they changed her name. And you had asked about my name, um, and they did change my name slightly. The name that I had at the children's home was Deanna, but my mom must have had some history with somebody who did her wrong. And she really did not like the name Deanna, and she wanted to call me Shantae. I don't remember how she was spelling that. But
It's the 60s.
in the 60s, the social worker, my social worker for, I guess, who was still around, which is surprising, um, said that they did not want her to rename me so much because it would mean that she's denying that I'm adopted, something along those lines.
Oh, wow. So
And so she was able to change Deanna to Diana, who she had a college roommate named Diana, and so that came with a good association, and so I was actually named Diana, and then I got my mother's first name, which is Echo, as my middle name. And so if you think of Diana Echo Inch, my initials are actually DEI, so I'm kind of the problem. I'm the source of all the problems these
the
days.
source of the DEI problems. So now that your sister comes along with you,
Yeah.
is there how are you feeling about this? You don't know that, oh, well, you're being spoiled. It's just you have another girl or in the family, or she
Yeah.
becomes your doll.
Well, and I don't remember this. And so Shauna, my sister, she was 14 months old when we adopted her. And so what I would have been just over 2 years old. And I think I must have been probably jealous, although I don't recall that. I do
Mm-hmm.
recall being kind of like a big sister who was mean to her sister but would stick
Mm-hmm.
up for her sister in other situations, right?
Right,
Like I'm
right,
the only
right.
one that can, beat up my
Yeah,
sister.
yeah, yeah. That's my sister. Don't. Mm-mm.
don't mess with don't mess with my sister. Yeah, right. And and so yeah, we did have so we grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, and I think kind of had a mostly normal childhood, going to school, having a few animals, a dog and cat, and then our parents did, I think, for the sake of giving us more of a black experience, we did go to Lochapoka, Alabama, which is in the suburbs of Auburn, I believe, when I was 5 or 6. This is in the early 70s, and our parents were Vista, Volunteers in Service to America. So it's kind of the Peace Corps, domestic Peace Corps. And since our father was a carpentry instructor at a community college, his job was to work with a Jewish youth group, helping low income families add on or build new homes where they were just had, tin siding and no plumbing. And he helped direct the Jewish youth group in creating homes that were more functional and kept the rain out. And our mother helped the families around Auburn figure out what to do with their government food commodities. So the government cheese and peanut butter and Caro syrup, and what to do with those things that they were given as part of the, I don't, it's not food, it wasn't food stamps, but it was,
Part of the allotment that. Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm it's
I can't think
escaping
of the
me
word.
right now what
Yeah,
what it's called. Anyway, so
but
we
your
were there
parents
for,
sound so. Um, I want to say evolved. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's just interesting that they and you did say that they were part of pseudo hippies, or because that's part of the culture that would
hmm
say we're step into these other situations and we're going to be better than what is out there, and to actually move you guys to a predominantly black area. I
hmm
think um, that is that's very not forward thinking. That's just something you applaud. I'm not sure. We're going to talk about how it maybe worked for you and maybe didn't work for your sister. I'm not sure what you learned in that experience just being out there. What was the learning for you?
For me, let's just pretend I'm 5 or 6. Um, and I loved black churches and the singing that I missed when we got back. Um, I I enjoyed just the community looking out for each other because we're kind of out in the sticks. And I noticed some racism, um, and there maybe in school it played in my favor because I was white passing. And so the teacher would put me in charge if she had to leave the room or something. She would put me in charge. I don't know why, other than I don't think I was more responsible than anybody. I was probably naughtier than most, but
So you went to
that
a
was the
school that
big.
was mixed race, right? Your school was mixed race.
So I went to a school that had one and a half black kids, uh, and a white principal. Yeah, I think there was maybe a white principal and one white teacher. Everybody else was black, except for there was I think one white kid in a different grade, and then me who was
So so
gray.
the racism was coming from black students too? Is that what you meant when you
Yeah,
said
definitely. Well, so the racism was, I guess, I got preferred status by my black teacher,
ah, yes,
right? So if she left the room, she would
yes,
leave. She'd be like, Diana, be the monitor or something,
yes,
which
yes, yes, yes,
I don't
yes.
know. And I don't have a whole lot of memories of that. Getting in
It's
trouble a
very
couple of
interesting.
times, throwing rocks at one of those beehives that came into the playground, and
Yeah,
some other
yeah.
shenanigans. But
Wow.
yeah, I went to school. Our brothers went to a different school. Because they were older, and then our sister was in went to Head Start and then daycare for half the day. And yeah, and that had turned out not to be a good experience.
Right. So how do your parents talk to you about these things during this time? Are you address? There's no conversation about this.
No,
I know you're young and you don't
right.
remember that, but I'm just curious as if they try to
Well,
explain.
yeah. No, I don't recall any conversations around race, and there was a store on just down the street from where our home was, and we had so in the 70s we didn't have indoor plumbing at first. We actually had an outhouse we had to go out to. So I got that experience, and that was scary because you'd have to watch out for like the black widow spiders
Oh
and
yes.
snakes, and yeah, so that's trauma in itself.
Absolutely.
And our dad,
Uh,
he did put in a indoor plumbing and stuff into our home after a while. But we had a well and like the old washing machine where you'd have to put the
yeah.
clothes through the wringer. And
So I you just had so many great experiences. I'm jumping in just so I can get as much in as I possibly can.
sorry,
There,
yeah,
no, don't be. I love it. I love it. But now let's get to the point. You move back. You
yeah.
move back because at some point I will speak with your sister to get that understanding from her. But you move back to Des Moines. Is that where you moved back?
Yes, yeah.
And okay, you're back in
I'm in
the groove.
second grade, I think.
Yeah. So, but you're back. It's a comfortable situation again. Is your parents are, you're in, is this a predominantly
Right.
white area, right? It's a predominantly
Yes.
white area. So then again, your sister is still dealing with certain things, whether it's in a black area or a white, she has to deal. So now becoming a teenager in that area, how did that start to, because, and I'm not saying that you were a rebellious teenager, but we do this, we start to turn and we start to identify, not necessarily with the right things, but we start to identify who we are. We're trying to figure it out. How do you do that? How did you do that when you started to become a teenager? And you get into dating and friends and who and
Well, well, so I didn't. I mean, who am I was constantly a thing in the back of my head, like and I didn't date because I didn't want to inadvertently, not that I was, going to be shacking up with anybody as a teenager, but just the thought of dating a possible brother, right? Because being
Ah,
ambiguous,
yes, yes,
I
yes,
didn't
yes.
know who I was related to. And so I just kind of, I did sports and enjoyed animals. And um, I would say, and this is often the case for adopted folks, we're people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're just trying to get along and trying to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not make waves and
Not rock the boat and
not rock the
not
boat.
please like me because I've already been given up. I don't want to be given up again
Right,
or whatever it is.
right.
I please like me,
Yeah,
like me, like me, love me, love me, love me.
yeah.
And that kind of goes into our adult life from time to time. So your teenage life was just kind of
Mostly
just figuring
focused
it out
around sports.
around sport. So I
Yeah.
at that time are you starting to think I want to know, or I know that's in the back of your head. I want to know where did I come from? Who do I belong to? What is this about? Are you questioning that? Is that coming more to the forefront or what?
Yeah. I want two things I'll address. I always anticipated reaching out to my birth mother to let her know that I was okay.
Oh, you
Even
knew
at
who she was?
7 or 8. No,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
no, I didn't know. But in my mind, that just
Mm-hmm.
seemed like a natural thing that if I had lost a child to adoption, I would want to know what happened, you know. And so I always thought that I would find her someday and let her know I was okay.
Yes, yeah. Did you
And
have a picture of that? Did you have a picture? Because I wrote that down because I had a picture in my mind of meeting my parents when I was young, that my mother was in Hollywood and they were going to come and rescue me and find that. I had that picture until it was like, oh, well, no, that's not happening. Let go of that. But that was sort of the young fantasy. Did you have a fantasy of what that would look like when you met them? Because I know you believed you would meet them at some point. I know I did. I believed.
yeah, I didn't that I recall. I just knew that I would find her someday and that my purpose was to let her know I was okay.
Okay.
And maybe, get some information. Um, so that maybe I could date later.
Well, I'll tell you a story
Um,
about that.
but what I wanted this, we were talking a little bit about race, and I had not realized this, that when my parents got me and the relatives knew I was mixed race, some of the relatives came over to check me out, and I passed, meaning I was white enough where they
I know.
continued to have a relationship with our family. However, and I didn't know this until as an adult because this is part of my sister's story that she heard from our mom, that when we adopted her, those same relatives came over to check her out. She did not pass, and basically that was we didn't have a relationship with those relatives anymore, which I'm like, good. But to be for her to be put in that place and have that be part of her story and the responsibility of that, I that's not okay. And I wish
No.
wish mom had
No.
had a little bit more sensitivity about sharing that. But anyway, I just wanted to. I think that's an important point, that people
Absolutely.
they don't always recognize what they're saying to their kids and how that might affect them, or and to stick up for your kid. It's like, okay, you're good riddance to those relatives and stick up for your kid, and to put the problem on the relatives that are racist rather than have the child feel like, oh, I'm the cause of
Of
this
your
rift in
this
the
rift, yeah.
family. Yeah, I did not realize my sister had been holding
Told
that
that.
burden
Wow. So
for
when was
years
she
and
told
years.
that? When did she
I
find
would
that out?
say she shared that with me in the last 10 years. Yeah. Um, and one other thing that she shared was she was always frightened of being sent back. And so she always tried to be good and perfect, where I was just doing whatever I wanted. I did not have that fear of being sent back, and to find out that she had lived her whole life in fear of being sent back. And I think that's partially because she was adopted at 14 months rather than 4 months. There have been studies shown that if you're placed at 3 months or less, you have a higher chance of just integrating well. And I think that's usually with same race placements for the study. But when you get older, as you get older, oftentimes it's harder. And for her, having her name changed from Lisa to Shauna, that was something else that happened to her, where my name was changed from Deanna to Diana, which was a small change, but her name was changed because there was another girl in our neighborhood with the same name as Lisa. But we moved from one suburb of Seattle, the Des Moines area, and we moved to Auburn in about 1976. So a few years after we returned from Alabama. And that's also predominantly a white area. And I would say my teenage years, I was saved by soccer and having an older friend who could drive me to and from soccer practice, because our parents got divorced when we were in high school. And my
And how
sister
does
was,
that work?
hmm,
How does that work? Do you go with,
we went
or you split time?
with our mother. Yeah, we stayed in the home. Our dad moved out, and and our mom ended up, and our brothers were already in college. They were already out, and so it was just my sister and I and a dog, maybe a cat, and our mom, who ended up working like 40 hours a week. She worked in the school system as either a teacher or teaching assistant. She worked at like Sylvan Learning Center doing
Oh,
tutoring, and
fabulous.
then on the
Yeah.
weekends she would work at like group homes, overnight group homes. And so we didn't see her very much, which left us unattended. But thankfully, I had a friend who would pick me up, and I just spent most of my time playing soccer. But
Wow.
and
So,
and oh yes, go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead. Finish your set thought.
Oh, well, and I'm trying to think about, again, I just wasn't interested in having any sort of, I thought dating as a young person is stupid anyway. I mean, you know, um and I do have high school friends who did go on, and they're still married now. We're actually having our 40th reunion in the first week of October, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah,
But
I focused on sports, and I had a lot of guy friends, but I didn't have many romantic things. And it wasn't until I was in college, I think when I was younger, I remember this. I knew I wanted to find my biological mother, and I wanted to do that before I was 30 because
Okay.
30 seemed really, really old at
Oh,
whatever
yes.
time.
I can understand that. So let's go. Actually, if you're okay with that, let's go to the search because I don't want to miss that in our
Okay.
time together. The search. How do you get to meet your biological mother? How do you get there? Where, when, why, how?
Yeah, well, again, it's complicated, right? So first, for me, and this I think is why I am in helping, part of what I do and have always done is I've helped people consider reuniting, seeking out relatives. And for me, I first had to decide, would I be able to handle whatever I found? Would,
Yes.
if that would be a grave, right? I'm getting there too late, which is why I set 30 by the time I was 30 because I didn't want to be too late and miss out on finding. The hardest thing, and I remember this distinctly in college because it wasn't until college that I was like, okay, how would that affect me if I found out that I had been the product of a rape or sexual assault or incest? How would that change my view of me? And once I came to terms that I would be able to handle whatever my truth was, that's when I truly began to search, and I got my non-identifying information so you can again pay money. And again, I'm a poor college student, right? So I had to pay maybe it was just a couple $100 back in the, I'm trying to think, in the 80s
That's still a lot.
or right when a whole term of tuition was like 400 or $500, right? That was a lot. And so I got my non-identifying information, which gave me, I found out that my father was reportedly black, my mother was reportedly white, and they hadn't been married. She did not feel like she could raise me on her own and made a choice to place me for adoption, and that they had good teeth.
They had good
So
teeth?
yeah,
Okay.
that was part of it.
Okay.
It's like, they talked
So
about
it
their,
wasn't open, the records weren't open at that time. You had to pay for
I
this
did pay.
information.
So the non-identifying information, somebody at the agency goes into your file and types up this sheet of basic information, like the ages, and some other things like what maybe their occupation. So my birth father had been in the military, and I wonder, let me see if I actually have it here. Anyway, so I did that, and I tried. One of the new things about non-identifying information in Washington State at that time was that you could get the first name of your parents. And so I went looking for a Janice, and I went into the Seattle Public Library and I looked through the newspapers, the old microfilm and microfiche,
Oh, yeah, microfiche. Yeah.
looking for Janice and wedding announcements because I guess they had been engaged and had were to be married.
Oh,
And I did it, part of the reason why I'm a librarian has to do with my adoption because I value information, accurate information, so much. and I spent a lot of time in the library looking for clues for myself, being a detective, about my own story and getting sick on what looking at the microfilm. I'll have to look for that a little later, but to see exactly what was on there. I haven't looked at it in a while. But what happened was, and I think this happens a lot, like the journey to reunion, it's a journey, and there's challenges, and sometimes it goes really fast and you're just like, oh, you're in reunion. Mine, I had to, it depended on my energy level, what else I was doing, how much I had. Like I couldn't afford a private investigator to go. And so what ended up happening was I got some information. I spoke, I was at Western Washington University in Bellingham, Washington, and I spoke to potential adoptive parents about adopting, particularly for international adoptees or transracial. And I just tried to educate them on some of the things that I wish our parents had known. And then I went to China. I had been studying Chinese in college, and there was a China teaching program. And so, you're supposed to travel when you're young. So I graduated from Western and then went to China right after Tiananmen Square. And I was there from 1990 to 1993. And that was also a really important time in my life because, again, I realized how important accurate information is and having access to information. And it was in China that I came to terms with that it was okay to be a librarian. You didn't have to have your hair in a bun and be mean, which is kind of the stereotypical,
Right.
kind of librarian that I'd been brought up with. So when I got back from China in 1993, I was able to enroll in, I believe it was the only library school west of the Mississippi, which happened to be at the University of Washington. Go Huskies. Got my purple. And I was there 1993 to 1996. And in 94, I got a job at the graduate school at the University of Washington, which gave me a tuition waiver. It gave me medical, dental, vision, and a salary. And so I had money to hire a confidential intermediary in 1996 when I'm 29 and a half and that clock is ticking down on 30. 30 is approaching. That was my deadline.
I'm just going to, just for our audience, you've now left, you were in China from 20, what was it?
1990 to 1993.
93. So you were there for 3 years. You discover, oh, it's okay to be, you were thinking about being a librarian before, or just that was something that kind of came to you there?
I had been thinking about becoming a librarian. Yeah. But my high school librarian was mean, like my elementary school librarian. Not my first librarian, Mrs. B. She was wonderful. But other librarians had been kind of kind of cranky. So, so in 1996, as I'm 29 and a half in library school, have some money to pay, can't remember, I think it was maybe $300 to hire a confidential intermediary.
A confidential intermediary, not a detective. Confidential
right.
intermediary is
And this is something in some of the states, Washington being one of them, where there's kind of a neutral party who you hire to get into your file, and then they reach out to the other party to see if they are
They're
interested
interested.
in
Meeting up.
connecting. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's a paid situation there. So while this is going on, how are you feeling about? Because you don't know, as you said, you don't know. None of us know. Are they going to say, "Look, I don't want to"? Because there have been parents who go, "I really don't want to deal with this. I have a life. I have a life now, and I haven't told anybody."
Yeah. That was one of the things that I had considered rejection again. And would I be able to handle that? And that would have been okay. My biggest fear had been, how would I feel about myself had I been the product of
Rape
sexual
and
abuse
abuse and
or
all that.
rape? Yeah.
So now things come together, and okay, the time you've set a time to meet your mom, to meet Janice. Is that her name? To meet Janice? Is that her name?
Right, Janice.
Yeah. So Janice. So you have set a time and meeting. All right. So take us through that.
Well, so what happened? So I hired the confidential intermediary, and I'll just call it a CI. And I get a phone call. I don't remember how many, if it was a week or 10 days or 2 weeks. I get a call from the CI, and she says that she got into my file. It looked like my birth mother, Janice, had kept her contact information current, up to date. And she said that there was a letter for me in my file from 1979 from Janice. And so she said this over the phone, and she said she would send me a copy of the letter. And I asked or begged her to please read the letter over the phone. Being a bit melodramatic, I was like, in case I die, at least I'll have known a little bit about, what she was thinking. And so she agreed. She did read the letter, and it was a beautiful letter that started off with "My dearest daughter," and she expressed respect and gratitude for my parents, and she didn't want any she didn't want to step in or replace or anything, but she hoped that I would find her. And she wrote that, like, as I was about to become a teenager. So she wrote it when I was still 12. I was going to be a teenager, and she said she had seen a TV program where biological parents could put letters in the file, and that is what compelled her to do that. And she said, "I hope and pray that you will find me one day." And
why couldn't they have given you this letter?
that is what I asked the confidential intermediaries. Like, why? It's been years. It's been 10.
You're
10
an
or 12 years.
adult.
Pardon?
I said
10
you're an adult at this time, and
Yeah.
shouldn't they say, hey, if they, knowing that adoptees and foster kids are going through this challenge, here's a letter.
Right. Yeah. And they didn't. And of course, a confidential intermediary didn't know why they hadn't shared that there was
Wow.
a letter in my file when they gave me the non-identifying information.
Or they just
Um,
forgot, maybe.
well, I did. Well, so I said to the confidential intermediary, I was like, the Children's Home Society better hope she's alive. Because if they're not, and she died in like from when I had asked to, to now, they're going to have a very angry adoptee on their hands.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I did later ask the director of the current director at the Children's Home Society, why didn't they send, share that there was a letter? And she hadn't been around at the time, but she was like, well, maybe they thought she might have changed her mind over the years. And I was like, who are they to decide that? It's like if a mailman knew you had sent a Dear John letter to somebody to break up and then decided, oh,
Oh, I'm not going to give it.
did,
No, yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Fortunately, she was still alive and was willing to connect with me, and just to speed up the ending, we had to send letters to the confidential intermediary to act as our go-between, which took a couple of months because what do you say, and it's complicated. And finally, I just had my housemate time me. I gave myself, I don't remember, an hour just to write, just to get stuff out, and sent that off. And then I got a letter. I was in library school. I was in the Suzzallo Library of the University of Washington when my housemate brought in my first letter, current letter from my birth mother. And I will say just here, the confidential intermediary did send a copy of that letter and had covered up the contact information, like hadn't shared the contact information of that letter. She had photocopied it and didn't include that. But my housemate brought in the first letter written in 1996 and delivered it just before class. And so I remember opening up the letter, and I've got my classmates around me, and I opened up the letter and she included a photo. And I look at the photo and I was like, oh my gosh, she has red hair, which my mom had always had a thing against the gingers, kind of taught us
Oh,
to
yeah.
fear redheaded
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I just
yeah.
thought was funny. Like, oh, well, of course she has red hair. But talking with my classmates, they saw the photo and they were like, who is this person with Diana's smile?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
lovely. What a story, Diana. What a
Well,
Okay, so let and the red hair thing, I remember that was always I'm going to change, we're going to do it in two parts, but the red haired story, I remember years ago that was something red haired or angry or something. They always had a thing way back when about red haired people or something. I don't know.
yeah, because what was in the letter was mind blowing.